What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel and welcome back to another True Crime Sunday. Now today we have a missing persons case. This is a mystery video and it's actually one that was suggested by one of you guys, and today we're going to be talking about Helen Munnings. Now this case is an Australian case and we're talking about a case that has literally been going for 11 years. Helen was born in 1988 on the 15th of March to Carol Munnings. Helen had two younger sisters and one older brother. So Helen grew up and all of her family live in Tasmania in a town called Burnie. Now, Burnie is a coastal town, which means that it is obviously on a coast, but it's in the section of Tasmania that is like, there's Australia and there's the ocean and then there's Tasmania. Burnie is like right here. So it's literally right in the bit that separates Australia from Tasmania. Now, Tasmania winters are considerably colder than what we would experience here on the mainland. If you're not aware, I'm from Brisbane and I have been complaining about the winter, but in Tasmania their winters usually go down to a low of 3 to 11 degrees. So I know that I shouldn't be complaining, but come on guys. Now sometime before Helen's 16th birthday, she would meet a man called Adam Taylor. Now he would be around 30 years old at the time. He was a local man and he did concreting work and tiling work. So even though there was a huge age gap between Helen and Adam, the night they met they had a sexual encounter. Now the legal age of consent in Tasmania is actually higher than what it is in any other state in Australia apart from South Australia. In Brisbane, everywhere else, the legal age of consent for sexual relations is 16 years old, but in South Australia and in Tasmania it is actually 17 years old. Now remember that at the time that this 30-year-old man had sexual relations with this 16-year-old, well, she was only 15 or 16, and he claims that he didn't know that she was 16 or 15. He says that he thought that she was 17, but an interesting thing about that is that her mother would actually say, you were there for her 16th birthday, first of all, and you gave her a Roxy watch for her 16th. So this all would have taken place when she was 15 and he would have known her age. Now, a lot of reports say that they remained friends until she was 17, which happens to be the legal age of consent, and I dare say that that is something that has come from him, because she's actually not here to say, like it was way more than just friends. He does actually change his story a lot when it comes to talking about anything sexual they did prior to the age of 17. Don't know what kind of attitude you have right now getting on the bed, Lolly, but you're not actually allowed on the bed. She doesn't care. Okay. It was when Helen fell pregnant that he started claiming that I actually have no idea who this girl is. He pretended like he didn't even know her. At this point, she was 17 and he was 31 years old, and because he was claiming he didn't even know her and he was outright saying to people's face, this is just a little girl, like I don't know her, she's just like a child. So obviously he knew that it was wrong, but he was claiming that he actually had no idea who she was. So Adam was denying the fact that he was the father until the DNA results came back and it turned out that you are the father. Carol did actually go to the police about Helen and Adam's relationship. Adam claims that it was Helen who pursued a relationship with him and that he only complied because she held their underage sexual encounter over his head. However, text messages between the two dispute that fact. Helen's age was not the only thing that made Adam want to pretend like he had no idea who this girl was. He actually had a long-term relationship and her name was Carolina or Carolina, but people call her Kaz, so I'm going to call her Kaz. So he had a long-term relationship with a woman named Kaz, and he also fathered 2 children to this woman. They lived in a house that they owned, which was just outside of town, and it was literally on the coastline, so it was on the beach. So when Helen became pregnant with his child and the paternity test came back being like, "You're the father," he said to Kaz, "Hey, like, it was a minor indiscretion, and, you know, old mate, you've got 2 kids with him. I understand the first time trying to make it work, and, you know, he seems like a very persuasive man." And also there are claims of domestic violence. It is all too common in Australian relationships, especially with that generation. They're a little less progressive, and there was a lot less help back then, even though it was 11 years ago. It is a long time in terms of progressiveness. So Carolina decided that she was going to stay with him, and, you know, obviously it rocked their relationship. And on top of that, Adam claimed to Kaz that he only slept with Helen like one time when they were on a break and she became pregnant. And unfortunately, Kaz believed that. But then on the flip side, we've got Helen, who Adam was telling that he was gonna leave Kaz, that, you know, she genuinely believed that they were pursuing this relationship because it was going to go somewhere, and obviously they had a child together. So we've got Helen on this side believing that he's going to leave Kaz, and then you've got Kaz on this side believing that it was just a minor indiscretion and that it would never happen again. But little did she know, or maybe she did know, I'm talking about Kaz, maybe she did know that he was still seeing Helen on the side. But either way, even him saying it was just a minor indiscretion and that it would never happen again, he still continued to see Helen on the down low. So Kaz has now accepted that, well, he's got a child with this other woman, they're gonna have to co-parent this child. So she already accepted this as a fact. So Adam claimed that he would only have contact with Helen when it regarded their son, and Kaz believed it, but Helen and Adam seemed to be in constant contact, and I'm sure, as you can imagine, that would have angered Kaz. And so they came to an agreement where anything, like literally anything that Helen had to say to Adam had to be sent to Adam's mother, and then Adam's mother would pass on the message to them. And so it turned into this agreement where Helen couldn't even directly contact the father of her son. I kind of get it, you know, this is Kaz trying to make the relationship work. They've got 2 kids together, but unfortunately that did not stop Adam from cheating on her, and it did not stop Adam from seeing Helen on the down low. In fact, he bought a second phone so that he could still contact Helen. Helen's mother had a huge issue with these 2 seeing each other. When you see photos of just how, I mean, Helen was just a baby. She was still in school when she met him, and Carol said that he was the source of all of her problems, and that he should have known better because he was an adult and Helen was literally 15 when she met him. But just like there was domestic abuse in the relationship between Kaz and Adam, there was also domestic violence in the relationship between Helen and Adam. Helen's sister did say that she wouldn't always come to her when domestic abuse happened, but there were times when she did come to her sister. Her sister said that Helen came to her after he hit her and pushed her up against a wall. And then we also have Helen's cousin who came forward and said that he witnessed abuse as well. Helen's cousin said that he witnessed Adam screaming at her and that he choked her, and he claimed that he grabbed her by the throat. Obviously, Helen got away and got in her cousin's car and they drove off, but yeah, there were a lot of people said that he had a thing for choking her. So Helen actually lived in a block of units that her mother owned. Her mother lived on the top floor, and then Helen lived on the bottom floor, and they would often go in between each other's units. They were always close. They had a very strong relationship. The situation between Adam and Helen in terms of custody, because he wanted custody and he fought for custody of their son. Helen had their son 1 week, and then it would just swap over, and Adam would have the son on the next week, and it would just be on a bi-weekly basis. It was in July of 2008 when Helen would come to Adam and say that she was pregnant again. Adam paid for a pregnancy test at their local pharmacy, and it confirmed that yes, she was pregnant, and she was saying that he was the father. And later on, he would come out and say that no, I wasn't the father of this second child, and he would claim that she got pregnant from a one-night stand as a result of a drunken night out. But her friends and family would say that that was not the case. She was not the type of person to do that. Even her family would say that Helen only had eyes for Adam. Now, Adam actually tried to convince Helen to get rid of the child and have an abortion. He tried to convince her by saying that she wasn't fit enough to look after 2 kids. Keep in mind that he was most likely doing this because his mother and his basically wife that he fathers 2 children to, they had no idea that they were even in contact on the phone, let alone sleeping together. 2 witnesses came forward and said that when they knocked on her door, they actually saw her getting dressed again, and that they saw Adam getting dressed, and she rushed to the door. And when she realized that they had been caught out, she was like, please don't tell anyone. And this was because, first of all, Adam was very violent with her, and second of all, he was adamant about keeping their relationship on the DL. A few weeks after the pregnancy test day happened, Helen left her unit to go into town. On this particular week, it was Adam's turn to look after their child. The child was at Adam's home with Kaz while Adam was at work. So on Helen's side of town, she was spending a lot of time, like the whole entire morning, with her mother. Remember, her mother just lives upstairs. She left her keys to her unit in her mother's house and then left her purse in her unit downstairs. Now, this is really important because her purse actually has her bank card, her Medicare card, her medication, and also her phone. The only thing that she had on her was her SIM card. Now, her phone was having some sort of problem where she had to like take her SIM card out, put it in someone else's phone, and I guess she just didn't get another phone. So that's why she only had her SIM card and her phone was still at home. The excuse that Helen gave for needing to leave because she was spending the morning with her mother was that she was going to the doctors. But when they called the doctors later on in the investigation, there was absolutely no appointment set for her, and she was actually never seen at the doctors. So even if she was just going in as a walk-in appointment, no one saw her, so she definitely wasn't going to the doctors. There is a Centrelink building in the middle of their town, and this Centrelink building is highly surveilled. It has a lot of security cameras. So the security camera inside the Centrelink building has a view of the walkway, or at least in a portion of the frame you can see the pathway outside of the building. And then outside of the building it has another surveillance camera, and a part of that frame you can actually see the different cars going past, which was helpful in this investigation because it actually showed Helen walking past the building, and then shortly after it saw Adam's mother's ute driving past the building. That day, Adam actually used his mother's ute. So in Adam's timeline, he finished work and he came home. He didn't even go inside. He literally just came home and then swapped cars to his mother's ute. Kaz claims that when she looked outside and saw him changing into his mother's ute, that she saw him put a saw in the tray. So Adam does not deny being the last person to see Helen. He has come forward and said, yes, I was. Well, he didn't come forward, he was questioned, but Adam did say that he was with Helen that afternoon and that he picked her up at 4:20 and that they drove around until 6 p.m. Now, he claims that they were talking about her having an abortion, and obviously we know from their text messages and from what she said to friends and family, she didn't want to get an abortion. He said that this topic angered her, it upset her, she got very emotional, but he claims that she calmed down enough for him to have let her out of the car at 6 p.m. at the local beach, and she said she just wanted to go for a walk. Keep in mind that this is winter, and at 6 p.m. it is usually pitch black. It is highly unconventional and irresponsible to drop a young woman off in pitch black on a winter's night so late at night with no phone and no vehicle to get home, but he claims that he did that. Also, another interesting note is that Carol says that when Helen left, she was just wearing light clothes. She wasn't wearing like a winter spread or anything like that that would keep her warm. So it's highly unlikely that she would have asked to get out of the car in those circumstances, especially because she was pregnant at the time. Nobody has come forward and said that they saw her walking on the beach. I mean, it was basically pitch black, but no one's come forward saying they ever saw her walking on the beach. He claims that he pulled over before going home, and he says that he sent her a text message saying, "Keep your chin up." Now, Kaz says that the night this happened, he came home and he said that someone tried to drag their little boat, which usually sits in their yard, down to the beach, and he said, "I'm gonna bring it back up." But she said that that was strange because she literally just got in and she walked past the boat and it was still in the yard. So she says that she saw him go down to the boat, and instead of bringing it up, he actually pushed it into the water, started the motor while he was just wearing shorts. I mean, it was a winter's night, it was pitch black. And she said that he got in the boat, turned it on, and he went off into the ocean. Kaz claimed that when he came back from this little boat trip that he made, that he spent the whole night in his shed. Now, she says that it's not completely unlike him to spend the night in his shed, but she also says that he was moving between the vehicles, that he was going between his mother's ute and his vehicle and then back to the shed and just moving in between those, and that to me is strange behavior. When he was questioned on why he got in his boat when he was just wearing shorts, it was a winter's night and it was pitch black, he said, "Oh, I just wanted to try the motor." Another strange thing was that the next morning he took the boat and he sent it to Kaz's brother's house, and then 3 days later he brought it back. Now, to me, that sounds like he did a little bit of a clean. Now, going back over to the family's timeline, Carol said that she was worried the night that Helen didn't come home, but then the next morning when she realized she's nowhere to be found, she let herself into Helen's unit and she realized that everything was still the same as it was yesterday. So she went to the police and she voiced her concerns, and when her daughter still didn't come home that night, she made an official report. And on that Friday, Helen was supposed to pick up her son as it was commencing into her week, and she never showed up. This set in real panic for her friends and family, and that's when a ginormous search went underway. They searched the sea and land on foot and via the air, and when nothing showed up, 1 month later, they decided to expand the perimeters and do a bigger search where they had divers go into the water. Nothing has been seen of Helen since. We are 11 years later. A lot of people say that the police really dropped the ball on this one, and I can agree. Even though that was a very elaborate search, they only searched Adam's place 1 year later. When the police were finally questioned on their handling of this case, and in specific why it took them so long to actually search Adam's property, they said that they didn't think that it was a big deal. They didn't see any issue with it, and they were like, they literally said that they didn't think evidence would be lost within that year. And just being amateur little detectives that we are, we even know that it only takes a couple of days for evidence to be destroyed, and in this situation we're talking about the ocean. So 1 year later, when they finally searched Adam's property and the ocean-ish area around it, they found a 9-liter bucket filled with concrete which had a rope attached to it, and on the other end of that rope was a loop. It was confirmed to belong to Adam, and when they tested for DNA, they couldn't find anything. They also couldn't find anything else on the ocean floor around the bucket. So there was no body found. It is 1 year later, but we have this bucket filled with concrete that has a rope attached to it with a loop. Let me just explain which part of the ocean this is. This is the Bass Strait. I think I explained this in the start of the video, but this is the section. Okay, so Australia's here, the ocean is here, Tasmania is here. This is literally where their property is. The ocean in between Australia and Tasmania, this part here, is known to be extremely rough. So anything that might have been in the water, if there was any sort of body, any sort of evidence, that would have been washed away by now, especially after a year. Not a single person has heard from Helen since she got in the car with Adam. Adam actually claims that he believes that she is alive and well and living in Darwin. And on top of that, he's given several different accounts of which route he actually took that night. This route has actually been tested to see if his accounting of time actually matches up to how long it actually takes. So he says that it took him 1 hour and 40 minutes, but the routes that he gave would only have taken 1 hour. So there is a 40-minute gap that he cannot account for. Now, Carol says that a couple of years after her daughter went missing, she saw him in town. She saw him in a shopping center and she couldn't stop herself. She said that she confronted him and asked him, "Where is Helen's body?" She claims that he responded with, "If you don't let this go, what happened to Helen is going to happen to you." Now, Adam actually denies that this ever happened. He claims that Carol is out to get him and that none of that ever happened. Carol also claims that because they still live in the same town, she sees him all the time. She says that he'll often smirk at her and wave. And interestingly, I watched an interview with him where the news people were following him. He was at a local bottle-o. He had just gotten some alcohol and he was trying to get into his car. They were asking about Helen's body, like, did he know where it was? Did he know what happened? Does he have any extra information? And it was kind of telling about like who this man is, but he tried to leave not realizing that he had to. So every time he gets into his car, he has to blow into a breathalyzer, and this usually happens when you've been caught drink driving a lot. And so he had to do his breathalyzer test before he could drive off, and so he was kind of forced to like answer their questions. So when he rolled his window down, he basically, all he said was that he was the victim and that he wanted people to stop asking him where Helen was. Later on, an inquest would take place and a coroner would say, or at least classify Helen as officially deceased. The coroner said that he doesn't believe Adam's claims that Helen's actually alive and well in Darwin. He says that is extremely unlikely. He said it was unlikely that she would ever abandon her child, especially if she left her Medicare card, basically all of her worldly possessions in her unit. And he also said that she was pregnant, so at some point she would have needed some sort of medical assistance and she would have popped back up again. But there has been literally no movement in Helen's bank accounts, no money taken out, nothing. No one has seen from her, no one has heard from her. Also, Helen, and I'm not saying this about everyone who lives in a small town or about everyone who lives in it, like, you know, because Tasmania is very secluded from the rest of Australia. I'm not saying this about every small town, but at least her family, they grew up in Tasmania, they still live there. And I don't know if that is a direct response to her being missing and them staying there because they, you know, just in case she comes back. But every single person in their family seems to be pretty, they say that she's dead, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know, it just seems like a thing for them to stay there. So it doesn't make any sense for her, not having a very high level of education, to just get up and leave. You know what I'm saying? To get up and leave from a town that everyone usually just stays in. All of her family is there. She didn't have any money, and she also had a child that she was obsessed with and a child on the way. So it doesn't make any sense for her to just run away. And that also kind of cuts out the idea of suicide. The coroner did claim that it's possible that she committed suicide if she had swum out into the ocean to the point where she couldn't get back, and that would have been suicide. However, for literally all the reasons I just stated, I don't particularly believe that that is a possibility. Police are reinvestigating this case. However, they don't say that Adam is a suspect. They say he's a person of interest, and it just seems to me that the police have missed too much evidence for them to even be picking this investigation up again. I don't know how they're even, it just doesn't seem like there is anything that they could get. It's been 11 years and yeah. The coroner did say because there was no body, there was no evidence to charge anyone with the murder or even say that she was murdered. So that's a little bit frustrating for the family, and if Adam had nothing to do with it, I'm guessing that it would be frustrating for him as well. So Helen still has a living son. He is all grown up, and Helen's family have not been able to have contact with him. And in fact, a song posted to YouTube, it's like a little rap song. It's kind of like a little home video type thing and a little home production thing, where one of her friends did a rap about Helen's case. And in this song, her friend raps, "It's sad that your family never get to see your son. It's sad that we will never meet your second one." So what do you guys think? Do you think that she is happily living in Darwin and never touched her bank account again and left her living son and never spoke about moving? And I don't see that as a possibility. So if you comment that, you're getting blocked. No, but seriously, my theories for this is something happened to Helen after she got in the car. I do believe that the concrete filled 9-liter bucket that had basically like a rope that you would weigh a body down has everything to do with this case. In fact, the divers said that there was absolutely no way that this could be used as a boat mooring, which is Adam's excuse for having this waiter. We know for a fact that he took the boat out that night, and when he returned, he was going in between the cars and in between his cars and the shed. And so it is my belief that whatever happened to her that night, she ended up attached to that concrete block and put in the ocean. And because it took police so long to really investigate it and to search Adam's property, her body would have been long gone. Like, the body will bloat, and it was only a 9-liter bucket of concrete. So while it would have held down her body previous to bloating, after a certain point of decomposition, the body would have been released into the ocean. And so it is my belief that Helen is in the ocean somewhere. I'm interested to know what happened to the SIM card that she had on her. I wonder, and I know that it's probably not a thing, but I wonder if the SIM card was ever plugged in again. I wonder if technological advancements would be able to see if it ever pinged again, or if the SIM card just remained in her pocket and is still with her, or is possibly on the ocean floor somewhere. So that is what I think happened to Helen Munnings, and I really hope that something is found. I mean, the police reopened the investigation, but I'm kind of like, what more can you find unless you actually search the property? I wonder if Kaz and Adam are still together. Kaz looks like someone who has her head on her shoulders, and she looks like she's doing a lot better than Adam. So I don't believe, or at least, you know, my assumptions would say that she's not with Adam, because everything I've seen of Adam, he looks disheveled. He looks like a little bit of a washed up human being, whereas pictures I've seen of Kaz, she looks a little bit more put together, and so I just don't see them as a couple. I would hope that she dumped his ass after the second pregnancy, after she maybe realized that he possibly murdered this young girl who mothered his children. But no judgment if she didn't leave him, because I know that domestically violent situations, especially when children are involved, are incredibly difficult to get out of, and I don't think we have any place to judge if she didn't leave him. Hopefully any sort of sea search or land search on his property will turn up even the SIM card, even just something small which will confirm it. I don't know that he will ever be charged with this murder, but it looks to me like his life is already just a wasted life. Just from my assumptions and what I've seen from him. I mean, he's got a breathalyzer attached to his car. It doesn't look like he's doing very well, but I do understand that he is free, and he is free to do this to another human being. So I do hope that something does come up. It's just, I don't know if they will find anything to solidify the case against him. I do hope that Helen's living son maybe sees this video and understands that his mother's family you know, you can't force these things, and I understand that growing up your whole life not knowing these people is, you know, it's a bit much to be like, hey, this random YouTuber said that I should go and link up with my possibly dead, murdered mother's family. I'm gonna go do it, you know. But I am saying that there is that opportunity there. You know, I have seen videos of the family, and it looks like they do want a relationship with you. If you're watching this, which, you know, there's a chance that you're not, but I hope, you know, that somehow the earth and the gods and whatever and something, energies, I don't know what that is, but I hope that somehow y'all link up and you get the relationship that you deserve with your mother's family, because I do believe that they want that with you. And I'm also really sorry that this happened, and I'm sorry that you know, I don't know what your relationship was like with your dad. I'm sorry if it was as violent as he has been to other people. I hope you had a really good childhood, if that was possible for you. Anyway, you guys, let me know what you think happened to Helen in the comments below. If you've got any extra information, definitely let me know. As always, I'll put any updates or new information in the description box below. This case was actually suggested to me by one of Helen's friends, and I really hope that I did this case justice. I tried, and definitely let me know if you've got any suggestions for next cases, whether it's a missing persons case, a murder, or just a straight up mystery. Let me know. My Instagram DMs are in the comments below. There are a couple of people who have sent me cases, but I have missed your DM. It is in the list of DMs, and I cannot find the ones that were sent to me like 2 weeks ago. So if you've ever suggested a case to me and it's not this case, please send me another DM so that I can write the name down. I will start doing that from now on, so that it doesn't get lost in my DMs. Let me know if you want more Australian cases. For some unknown reason, Australia does not have like extremely publicized cases. I know that just because we're Australia and it's not publicized, that these things don't happen, because they definitely do happen, but Australian press just does not like to include that like American press does. So it is definitely a lot easier for me to do American cases over doing Australian cases. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up. It really does help. And if you want to subscribe and be a nice guy, I post a beauty video, or like a Ellie tries, or like a, I don't know, any kind of video on a Wednesday. But every Sunday I always do a true crime case. So I'll put my little head here if you want to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.